I have a question for you guys. Is it just me, or does it seem like 2023 was just a bad year for movies? Just looking at my letterboxd of the entire year and looking at all the new movies that I had to see this year, and I'm like, man, it was a depressing list, honestly. But there were quite a few great movies to slide in there, which was a good thing. And let's keep it positive here. These are the top 10 best movies I have seen this year. And again, guys, I hate to preface this, but these are just the 10 movies that I enjoyed watching the most. Me personally. So let me know your list down in the comment section down below. What are the 10 movies that you enjoyed watching the most? And I also want to start off this video by saying that I have not seen every single movie that came out this year. 2023 was a whirlwind in my personal life, so I didn't see as many movies as I would have liked to. Here are some of the movies that I did not see this year that will not be on this list. Ferrari, Poor Things, Dream Scenario, Maestro, Iron Claw, Saltburn, Wonka, Color Purple, Godzilla -1, Next Goal Wins, Hunger Games, Asteroid City, May December, Beau is Afraid, and Are You There God? It's Me, Margaret. So if you're wondering where those movies are, I just haven't seen them yet. And also, real quick, I want to say thank you to our video sponsor, Into the AM. I'm wearing one of their shirts right now. They have a ton of clothes that are comfortable, they fit, lots of great designs, and the link down below is for 10% off. So we have number 10 for Spider-Man Across the Spiderverse. Now, I rewatched my review for this movie before filming this, and I was actually shocked that this movie even ended up on my top 10 list, because I like this movie a lot, so much so that it's on this list, but it does feel like it's more of the same. I really enjoyed Into the Spider-Verse, and I really enjoyed Across the Spider-Verse, but much like Scream 6, which unfortunately did not make the list, it feels very similar to Scream 5, or Scream from 2022. It's a good movie, although I just don't think that this movie really did much more with the material. It's still an amazing movie. The animation is top-notch, the story is really deep, the characters are really well written and interesting, and the third act in this movie, I mean, man, that theater erupted. It went inside out, upside down. It really subverted our expectations in a good way. And I cannot wait for Beyond the Spider-Verse. Is it next year? The year after that? Who knows? I'm looking forward to it. Number 9 is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. And I promise that this list will not just be superhero movies. I understand how people are upset or, can be kind of annoyed at all these lists having superhero movies. But I promise there's more than just these movies on here. Now, like I've said in other videos, I am completely off the MCU hype train. I see the upcoming movies for the MCU, the DC movies, and I just go, I'm not interested in seeing them. I'm skipping Aquaman Lost Kingdom. It looks bad and I don't want to see it, so whatever. But I gotta admit, Guardians of the Galaxy kind of feels separate from the MCU because it has its own group of characters and it has its own personality, and that was really like the first movie that really introduced that Marvel humor. And I felt like this movie felt the most emotional. It didn't feel like the most grand epic ending to the Guardians of the Galaxy trilogy. It felt more of a personal story, especially with Rocket Raccoon, and I thought they did a fantastic job of it. And it was a great ending, and that was kind of like okay, I'm done with the MCU. This was a great place to end it. And yeah, because every other MCU movie I've seen since then was, the Marvels is not going to be on this list, let's say that. Number 8 is BlackBerry. Now, I've said this in many videos before, but if you don't know this about me, I went to film school in Vancouver, Canada. And throughout my entire time in film school, especially in a Canadian film school, we always talk about how Canadian content, one of my professors used this analogy, and I think it's brilliant. American cinema is the donut. World cinema is the hole. Canadian cinema is the hole within the hole. Basically, we don't have Canadian movies. We don't have the funding for them and yada yada yada, beyond the point. It's so nice to see a Canadian story being told by a Canadian filmmaker with the budget and the talent that you would see in a Hollywood production. So much so that even Americans started watching this and they didn't even know it was a Canadian movie. And I bet you didn't either. So that's why I'm so happy to see this movie doing well and people are talking about it. And it's a really entertaining movie. It was extremely engaging, and I was kind of surprised because, again, I hate to say this, but most Canadian movies that I've seen are not that good. Very inspirational and yet also very melancholy at the end. It's the rise to riches and fall from grace storyline, and Glenn Howerton, man, oh my goodness. I honestly thought, and again, I haven't seen those other movies, but he gives a great performance. Honestly, I think it's Oscar worthy. He won't get one, he won't even get nominated, but he gives a great performance in this movie. So does everyone else. Number 7 is Tetris, and yes, this is like the year of the business biopic movie. You had BlackBerry, you had Tetris, another movie that's gonna be coming up on this list. I think you know which one it is. The Beanie Bubble was also really good, but Tetris was just such a fun movie to watch. I love how you had all of the scene transitions be these little 8-bit creatures, and it felt very unique and it felt very fresh. And I mean, Taron Egerton, man, That guy should be way more famous than he actually is. That guy should be getting much more work than he actually is. I mean, his role in Elton John was fantastic. Eggsy in the Kingsman movies was also amazing, and he's amazing here too. I think he's one of my all-time favorite actors. He has so much charm and charisma, and yes, some people have said, like, it is kind of weird how this movie is rated R, but I do think that this movie has a very unique and fresh voice, and it feels like it does stand out from the other business biopics. A really fun ride with that one. Number 6, and this is a bit of a curveball here, which is Paton. And after watching RRR earlier this year, I felt like I wanted to watch some more Indian movies. Now, there's a large Indian population where I live, and many times in the Cineplex theaters, a big movie in India actually ends up playing here. And they had English subtitles, and I was, talking with some of my Indian friends, and they said, you gotta see this Paton movie. I said, okay, let's go watch it. I had so much fun at the theater. It felt like it was Mission Impossible meets Fast and Furious, and it just wasn't taking itself too seriously. And I actually thought that the structure of the movie was really solid, and the writing was, it's so tight, and the characters are likable, and they know that, you want to see a hero be badass and be charming. You want to see a woman who's, also extremely strong and powerful, but yet also really sexy and alluring. A villain who's intimidating, and a climax that's super exciting. The action scenes are just over the top. I had so much fun with this movie. So if you guys like movies like Mission Impossible and Fast and Furious and just want to indulge yourself in the cheesiness of it all, Paton is a great movie. Number 5, and this is a controversial one. I know this. It's The Flash. Yes, Ezra Miller, personal life, separate art from the artist, yada, yada, yada. This was one of the best superhero movies I've seen in a long time. I know The Batman came out last year, which is a better movie than this, but still. The Flash, I thought, was an amazing movie because I thought that everything had its place. It had heart. It was well written. I liked the characters. Ezra Miller gives a great performance as the Flash. The action scenes were intense. Yes, the CGI is not very good. Who cares? And I'm not a DC fanboy, I promise you that. And I'm not even a really big fan of the Michael Keaton Batman movies. But my goodness, it was so cool seeing him on screen. He kicked so much ass, and again, it made me feel like a 9-year-old kid watching Spider-Man 2 in the theaters again in 2004. Not many movies can bring me back to that level of just excitement, watching a superhero movie and getting those superhero chills. I thought The Flash was very, very good, and it's a shame that it didn't do well. But you know what, though? I gotta admit, again, although that movie was really, really great, I'm kind of done with superhero movies. Even watching Blue Beetle, I like Blue Beetle just fine. I'm kind of over it. Let's see something else. But a good movie is a good movie, and I think The Flash is actually a great movie. Number 4 is Creed 3. Now, I was really happy to see Creed 3 in theaters opening day because before that, I had seen 5 movies in a row that honestly I could have thought might have been the worst movie I've ever seen. And I was so depressed, and I'm thinking, this is not fun anymore, watching the new movie every single week, because it's just crap. I understand that it was in February. Not many, tentpole movies come out in February or really amazing films, but I was just down in the dumps, and Creed 3 was the one inspirational movie to just lift me off of my seat and feel like I could do anything. And that's the thing about the Creed movies. They're so inspiring. They're so uplifting, and they're well told too. And I remember watching Rocky IV as a kid, being scared of Ivan Drago, and I was pacing around my room. I actually had to pause the movie, and I'm like, oh, I can't stand him. I felt that way about Jonathan Majors in this movie. What a great villain. And he wasn't just this, evil mustache twirler. He actually did have a backstory, and you understand why he was acting this way. It was just such a well-made movie. Creed 3 was one movie that, man, I want to show my dad. It's one of those movies that, kind of embraces masculinity and just says, you know what, you can do anything you put your mind to. You can do it. And I think that's a great thing. Number 3 is Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. Now, I will admit that my hype for this movie was just off the charts. Tom Cruise is my favorite actor next to Tom Hanks. I have it, the two Toms, right? And like many other people, Fallout was just unbelievable. So it's how do you top that? Dead Reckoning Part 1. Well, I don't think this movie was as good as Fallout, right? And I did see some people, say that it was kind of disappointing because their expectations was so high. I do think that this movie did not live up to my expectations because, again, they were through the roof. And that's the thing, guys. Try to go into movies with little to no expectations because, again, that perfect movie that you see in your head, very few times a movie will actually live up to it. And I find that people start to lie to themselves because, I did it, right? When you see, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull in the theater when you're 13 years old, it was amazing. right? But regardless, this movie had everything that you want in a Mission Impossible movie. Tons of great setups, tons of great action sequences, lots of double crossing and a lot of espionage. And I will admit that there was one part in the movie where I was getting really frustrated because it was getting a little too complex. And some people will say, you know, like, oh, Brandon, you're just dumb. You just don't understand it. I've gotten a lot of those comments and, you know, they're probably right. But at the end of the movie, it all comes together and you're going, oh my goodness. It's like, you know, you're kind of dragging behind, but the movie's like, you know what? You're along for the ride with us. You are a member of the team, which is the theme of the movie, really. Even when, you know, Tom Cruise, Ethan Hunt gets his first mission briefing. Welcome to the IMF, right? It rewards you for staying along with the ride, and the ending just, man, I am so excited for the next one. You can't even, like, wow. Number 2, we have Oppenheimer. Man, I'm so angry with myself that I only saw this movie once in theaters. It was at the press screening. I wanted to see it so many times again in theaters, but life got in the way and I just couldn't do it. I now have it on 4K and I'm just dying to watch this movie again, but it is 3.5 hours. But I do think that this story warranted that runtime, and I used this analogy when walking out of the theater. I felt cinematically full. This movie has so much in it. You guys have ever seen JFK? This is the modern day JFK. Christopher Nolan's JFK. Wow. What a powerful experience. And number 1 is Air. I honestly can't believe that Air ended up being my number 1 movie of the year, but the more I think about it, the more I like it. And if you go back to my review, I explain it perfectly how, you know, you get that perfect blend of just natural acting, the script being extremely tight, how all those little details might be minute and obscure and mundane at the time, but they end up being brought back later in more important ways. All the performances work together. The pacing is amazing. The structure is just extremely solid. It's uplifting, it's inspiring. I'm a big fan of 80s culture, so seeing all the references and hearing all the songs just added to my experience. It hits the sports angle for me, it hits the business angle for me. Ben Affleck is one of my favorite directors, and he does another great job here. And yeah, overall, it's just my favorite movie of the year. So to recap, Spider-Man Across the Spiderverse, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, BlackBerry, Tetris, Paton, The Flash, Creed 3, Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1, Oppenheimer, and Air. So although this year as a whole was pretty disappointing for movies, I would say that these 10 movies are really great. And there were a couple more that didn't quite make the list. I mean, Gran Turismo was a fun ride, Scream 6, and guilty pleasure alert, Transformers. I actually had way more fun with that movie than I should have. But then you of have some dramas like Killers of the Flower Moon and The Holdovers were also really great. I'm one of the only fans of Wish out there. I really liked it. I don't know what to say. But those are my top 10 movies of the year. And if you want to know my more detailed thoughts on all these movies, I do have those reviews on my channel. Just type in BrandoCritic, that movie, and you'll find the review for it there. And that's about it. So thank you so much for all the support this year, guys. I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.